Hello everyone, welcome back to the rehabilitation module. I'm going to discuss about shoulder injuries and rehabilitation. We are going to see common injuries in athletes, especially overhead athletes, and then how we are going to manage shoulder injuries in the field of sports physiotherapy, and then how effective the rehabilitation is. So that is what we are going to discuss about in this module. The learning outcome of this module, you will be able to understand the anatomy and biomechanic features of shoulder. Then you will be able to design a rehabilitation protocol for shoulder injuries. I don't need to discuss much about introductions, as we are all aware that shoulder is the most mobile region in the body, and the shoulder can move faster than any other joint in the body. When we talk about shoulder joint complexes, we should know about functional anatomy and biomechanics. So the functional movements of shoulder are a result of complex interaction between many muscle, ligaments, and bony articulations. Since the shoulder joint is inherently unstable, and the design of the shoulder with the humeral head, that is the ball at least the 3 times bigger than the glenoid socket, the shoulder joint relies heavily on ligamentous and muscular stabilizers throughout its movement arc, which means when you compare with the hip joint as opposed to the hip with its congruence, ball and socket, shoulder we used to call golf ball and a T joint. So if any of the static or dynamic stabilizers are injured by trauma or overuse, the shoulder is at increased risk for injury. So since we call scapula is the operating base, and when you understand the functional anatomy, which what it's going to give us. So what is the purpose of learning functional anatomy? It helps to identify the source of injury and shoulder pain. So you'll get to know if you are not aware of functional anatomy. So it's very difficult. So if patients complaining of pain in the anterior shoulder, and then we should be able to visualize what are the structures so under the pain area, which means source of injury and then shoulder pain. So this module provides an overview of the functional component of shoulder joint complex that are relevant to understanding the shoulder injury and pain as well as rehabilitations. So the component structures that are explored, what we are going to discuss in the next slides. So we're going to learn about bony anatomy. That's called, so what are the bony anatomy in shoulder, as we are all aware. So we have a humerus, clavicle and scapula. And what are the articulations like bony and muscular articulations? We have a glenohumeral, acromioclavicular, sternoclavicular, and scapulothoracic. And again, I'm going to talk about stabilizer. So there are the two stabilizers. One is providing static stability, and then other structures are being provided dynamic stability. So what are the structures that provide static stability, like labrum, capsule, and ligaments? And what do you think? What are the dynamic stabilizers? Yes, we call rotator cuff, deltoid, and scapular stabilizers. And the glenohumeral joint has the highest amount of range of movement in the body, as we have got 360-degree flexion extension, abduction, adduction, circumduction, internal and external rotations. So when you talk about shoulder joint, yes, the stability is sacrificed to maintain this mobility. Yes, as I said, so the shoulder has got highest amount of range of movement. So stability is somewhat sacrificed to maintain the mobility. And then as we discussed, it's purely depend on the ligamentous and muscular control for stability. As we said, like, we already learned about functional anatomy, because the functional anatomy helps to identify the source of pain and source of injury in relation to the shoulder pain. So as we discussed, yes, the bony anatomy and bony and muscular articulations, static stabilizers, and dynamic as well as static stabilizers, and finally neural control. So as we studied in the biomechanics is planes of motions. So the reason why I've added these slides is as a physiotherapist, especially in the sports field. So we need to know the movement pattern in which plane which is occurring so that it is help us to design a mobility training. So as we are all aware, the flexion extension in a sagittal plane, whereas AB and adduction in coronal plane, and followed by the horizontal abduction and adduction is happening in a horizontal plane. So though already we studied in the biomechanics in our undergrad, but still it's no easy to remember. So I added a few points to remember. And the slides I'm going to discuss about the biomechanical and anatomical features of scapula. As I already said, the joint surfaces have a greater conformity. And what happens during elevations when you elevate the shoulder, the inferior capsular ligament complex and rotator cuff tendons remain untwisted because so during elevation the humeral rotation is not required because the humeral head rotation happens only during internal and external rotations. And even during abduction and adduction there will be a gliding of humeral head, but not rotation is required. So elevation of the shoulder during the elevations, so there won't be any untwisted in rotator cuff as well as capsular ligament structures. And one of the rotator cuff called the supraspinatus and deltoid are optimally aligned for elevations because since the supraspinatus is really considered the early abductions. It's a prime mover. It initiates abduction up to 15 degree and then deltoid carries forward. And so most of the functional activities are performed in the plane. So what are the points to remember before you get to know the palpation guidelines? So there are relevant anatomical points to remember. Yes, the head of the humerus provides attachments to the rotator cuff muscle, or any injury or a fracture that involves head of the humerus will include a rotator cuff injury, because this is one of the important points to be noted. So like head of the humerus, we have a greater tubercle, lesser tubercle. So as we said, like see, rotator cuff muscle has its own attachments. So any injury or fracture that involves head of the humerus will, so points to remember as I said before. So if there is anything in the head of the humerus, definitely there will be a relation to the rotator cuff muscle. And when you talk about acromion, the shape of the acromion to be considered in patients with impingement syndrome, yes, especially when you do a knee or Hawkins-Kennedy. So we should know the acromion. We should be able to acromion the shape of the acromion to be considered in patients with impingement syndrome. So and the glenohumeral joint is fully sealed by a capsule and normally contains less than 1 ml of joint fluid and a slightly negative intra-articular pressure, which provides suction effort to resist humeral head translations, because the humeral head have anterior or posterior translations. So as we are all aware, when you get a chance to look at the picture, the humeral head is fully sealed by a capsule, because yes, though it's not a true ball and socket like hip, so it's a golf ball and a tee. So the glenohumeral joint is fully sealed by a capsule. And the glenoid labrum enhances stability by deepening the concavity of the glenoid socket, and also act as an anchor point for capsular ligament structures and loss of integrity of the labrum. So which decrease the resistance to the translation by 20%. And so what are the other points to be remembered? The sternoclavicular joint represents only true articulation between the upper extremity and the axial skeleton. And the scapulothoracic space is occupied by neurovascular muscular and basal structures that allow relatively smooth movements of the scapula and the underlying thorax. And the important point to be remembered, although the capsule and glenohumeral ligaments are often described separately, they are intimately adherent anatomically. The capsular ligament structures reciprocally tighten and loosen during rotation of the arm to limit translations. And the last point to be remembered, the recurrent shoulder instability usually involves injury to the inferior glenohumeral ligament, the thickest of all the three glenohumeral ligaments. So now we get into palpation guidelines. So what are the palpation guidelines when the shoulder girdle is in neutral? So the superior medial corner of the scapula is the level with T2. So the scapular neutral portion from T2 to T7. So I mentioned about the palpation guidelines because it's sometimes you get bored when I keep reading the slides. So I mentioned it in a bulletin point so that you can go through, because so already we have been treating a lot of overhead athletes. So what is the purpose of understanding the palpation guidelines? Because so we're going to talk about much scapular dyskinesis. There is alteration in the scapular movement, whether it is elevated or downward rotated, outward or inward rotated. So if you're aware of the scapular neutral positions, it's easy for us to understand the biomechanics, how it's happening. So what happened to the scapula or what happened to the shoulder? So any injury, so is it a scapular related shoulder pain, or the scapula has got some abnormal movement, that's because of the shoulder pain? So it is easy for us to identify um, when the shoulder girdle is neutral. And as I said, like I have mentioned it in a bulletin point so that you can read about it. There's nothing to explain because it's all the palpation guidelines, where it is, what happens. So the most important points to be remembered, like in the scapular distance. So when you talk about the medial border of the scapula is in contact with the rib cage, yes, if there is no winging, it has to be in contact with the rib cage, as well as the medial border of the spine of the scapula is approximately 5 to 6 centimeter lateral from the vertebral spinous process. So if there are any changes, like you can get to know, so what is exactly happened through the scapular distance test. So yes, we all have studied about osteokinematics and orthokinematics in undergrad. So what will be the movement in scapulothoracic joint, and what about the articular movement? So basically it depends on the concave and convex rule. So usually we have a roll, slide, and then spin. And then when you talk about scapulothoracic, it's elevates and depresses, depressions, protraction and retractions, and each and every action performed by its own muscle. Like, so when you talk about elevations, like also you can mention about upper traps and then levator scapulae. So the levator scapulae elevate the scapula because since it has an insertion at medial border of the scapula. So just to remember, I will include this slide, so nothing major about it. So already you know about osteo and orthokinematics. And yes, the scapulohumeral rhythm, that's one of the important important tool in assessing patients with shoulder pain, because rhythm talks about a lot. So when you ask the patient to move their arm on your sideways, so the purpose of doing abductions, so like how the rhythm is maintaining between scapula and the humeral head. So definitely there is an alteration in the scapulohumeral rhythm followed by any shoulder injury or a shoulder pathology. So it's important to know about what is scapulohumeral rhythm, and how it influences the shoulder functions. So the as we said, like the scapulohumeral rhythm is an essential concept in understanding of shoulder functions. The phenomenon, the scapulohumeral rhythm phenomenon, describes the relationship of a movement between the scapula and the humerus, as I said. However, the sternoclavicular and then acromioclavicular joint also